Amusement park workers, what is the strangest thing you've found while cleaning after the park has closed? We didn't find it, but we stopped a roller coaster briefly to have maintenance look around for a guest's glass eyeball that fell out during his ride. Some kid just found the best marble ever. Worked at La Ronde in Montreal a few years back. We had trouble with a clogged toilet. Finally brought the big guns in. The plumber pulled out half a bra. Who flushes down a bra? A person. I worked in a video arcade at an amusement park. We were shutting down for the night and I went to a corner to turn out the lights. There was a passed out teenager behind a video game. He was so out, it took 4 guys to carry him to the security station. I don't know what they did with him after that. All unattended minors will become property of Walt Disney World if they are not claimed within 24 hours. So this wasn't after close. This was during full operation in the middle of the day. My friend manages a smaller retail store on the main strip of an amusement park. I manage a store across the way. One day he called me into his store to find a human crap just sitting in the middle of the floor. The guest had even gone as far as to put one of the tall novelty wizard hats we sell over top of the poo to cover it up. I'm not sure how they were able to poo in the middle of the store without anyone noticing, but they did. The next day he called me over again, even more distraught than the last day. Not only had someone crap in exactly the same place again, they put wizard hats in a circle around the poo instead of covering it. We never found out how or why, but that wizard hat circle of crap is the funniest thing I've seen in my life to this day. Oh man, I've been waiting to tell this story. I worked as a lifeguard in California's raging waters about 10 years ago. It's really easy to break into the park at night, or at least it used to be. Not sure if things have changed. There's one really steep, really tall ride called Dropout that's famous for 2 reasons. 1. It's scary as frick when it's your first time because your back doesn't touch the slide for a second and you free fall, and 2. Girls lose their tops on it all the time. Well, one early morning, a group of us lifeguards are doing a quick clean before the park opens. We go to drop out and find motherfucking BMX tire tracks going down the slide, which would have been cool if there wasn't a dried puddle of blood and motherfucking teeth laying at the bottom. There was a trail of blood leading back to the fence where you could sneak out of the park. I never heard more about what my bosses found on the security tapes, but I'm really hoping the crazy fool lived and their friend just had to evacuate them. Yeesh. Whoa, holy crap, that must have been amazing and terrifying to behold. More condoms than you would believe, in lines. If you've ridden the volcano at King's Dominion, people be getting it on in the line. I used to be a landscaper at Disney World. Sometimes we'd start at midnight and work until 8 before guests would arrive. For God's sake, people need to stop throwing trash in the planters. There are tons of trash cans everywhere that suck the trash away through an underground vent. I hated picking out forgotten half-eaten turkey legs and other food wrappers in the colliers beds. One year someone kept hiding little pictures of Bob Hope. I found one in an ice bucket. They were found on rides, in cash registers, in gardens. For the entire summer Bob Hope would turn up when you least expected it. This was at Idlo Isle in Pennsylvania. No one expects the Bob Hope Inquisition. Cleaning out the picnic shelter in the park, I came across a cooler left behind. I was curious, so I opened it up. The first thing that hit me was the smell. I can't even describe it. It was a cooler full of vomit. Like, a lot of vomit. One of the most disgusting things I have ever seen. This happened during operating hours, working a water coaster ride. The things that have the logs that float down a river and then go down a slide. I'm at the loading station. People getting on and off, etc. And people tend to leave stuff behind like bags or something because of the possibility of losing them on the ride. So one day, there is this thing. It looks like a sloth. I don't know what the heck it is, but it is this weird looking slothy fur thing, and it has been sitting at the ride now for maybe an hour or so. Can't tell if this thing is moving or if the water splashing up from the ride is giving this the appearance of moving. Supervisor comes. I point at it. Is it a dead animal that we need to dispose of? So finally, after a while of this thing sitting there and look like a dead sloth or whatever, and people giving this thing a wide berth as they exit the ride, the supervisor decided he needed to deal with whatever this thing was, cause it was an obstacle and or animal and people were acting a bit cautious around it. He goes and gets a broomstick and begins to prod this hairy thing on the floor, seeing if it is alive or dead or whatever. It doesn't seem to be moving. He begins to try to roll it over and prod it. What the heck is this thing? While this is happening, some riders on a log are coming into the loading station. A heavy-set woman yells, "Hey." She then stands up while log is still moving and yells, "Hey, what are you doing? Stop poking at my hairpiece." My supervisor looks up immediately and runs away. TL. Doctor, thing that looks like a dead sloth is a woman's hairpiece. This happened just recently actually, not after park hours though. The other day I was loading my ride like nobody's business and suddenly hear a call out over the radio that a guest had taken captive of a bird and was taking it with them on rides and stowing it in their purse throughout the day. We only discovered this because some annoyed guests told on them as they were in line for our ride. So we sent the supervisor out to speak to the guest. Turns out that it wasn't a bird found in the park, it was found on a coastal city in Florida and brought into the park, actually making it through the bag checks and everything. The guests would play the bird occasionally throughout the day and literally bring it on rides that bags were allowed on or store it in lockers if not. We ended up taking responsibility for the bird and giving it to horticulture. Needless to say, I think that's the strangest thing I've seen brought into a park by far. TLDR. Found out a guest brought a baby bird into the park. They would bring it on rides. We took it and gave it to the proper department for further care. The guests would play the bird occasionally throughout the day. I can only imagine someone squeezing on a seagull and it making noise like a set of bagpipes. I worked parade audience control at Magic Kingdom several years ago and we had some interesting moments. The worst was not after the park closed though, but during operating hours. In the early afternoon, we were tasked to always keep an eye out for suspicious activity as we were one of the only guest-facing cast members who were allowed to transition from one land to the other. Otherwise, if you were from Frontier, you could never be seen in Fantasyland in your costume, etc. We were called over to set up a perimeter around a trash can in front of the confectionery on Main Street and advised that we were awaiting security to clear an abandoned package. It turns out someone had taped a bunch of wires to an old VHS camera along with some random electronics to make it appear as though a bomb had been placed in one of the trash receptacles prior to a parade. It was inert obviously and was disposed of. However, we took it as a penetration test and bumped up security immediately. Needless to say, we were on edge the rest of the week. Not an amusement park worker, but on one trip to Cedar Point, a friend and I were walking along when we saw a large amount of liquid cheese that looked like it had been poured in a line, so we started to follow it because it was a lot of cheese. The line lasted maybe 40 yards and turned into a dead end where we found an empty bucket and a chocolate covered banana with cheese footsteps surrounding the bucket. Weirdest thing I've ever seen. I still don't actually understand what the heck I saw. FBI badge, ID card, and handgun. The agent was extremely relieved to know we hadn't called the local FBI office to report what we had found. Former ride operator here. We used to do a 730 start and basically sweep the entire park with litter pickers. Things I used to find regularly: used condoms, an abundance of filled nappies and diapers, plenty of child and adult sized underwear and clothes, entire meals, still in trays and on plates left on tables, car keys, wallets, phones, bags, purses, cameras that had been left behind. It was always beyond me how people managed to leave their car keys yet still drive home. Numerous strollers, buggies, wheelchairs and the occasional electric wheelchair. Every now and then a car would be abandoned in the car park. Occasionally parents would leave forgetting a children. Quite often I would find teeth as well. Some that had been knocked or rattled out by rides and just left on the floor or in ride cars. Dried blood was surprisingly common. Walking sticks were more commonly found than umbrellas. On rides, if I found any money under the value of £30, I was allowed to keep it so long as it wasn't claimed back by the park closing. I also used to take home a lot of sunglasses and put them through the dishwasher when I got home. I wear a nice pair of Ray-Ban aviators that I found on a ride once. I worked at Alton Towers for a summer and there is an area of the park with woodland and nice gardens to walk around. At the end of the summer period the park decided to replant a whole section. Tore down a row of shrubs to find 5 pitched tents and inside was documents for working at the park and old names tags and things. And the best part about it was this was in 2004 and the documents were dated back to 1995. It looked like a group of immigrants got jobs but had nowhere to live. Helped clear that up. There are some caves deep down in the gardens as well that I found one time. Tampons. Tampons everywhere. My Bill found a stash of baby dolls in a backpack once. They were all naked and most had their heads removed and then replaced with a head that obviously didn't belong to that doll. The front pocket made it even creepier. He found a box cutter and a small Tupperware container full of what he assumed was fake blood. I didn't want to know the rest of the story. I really wish there would be more. I found a bag of money or a diamond ring and less bags of dongs and fesses. Oh well. I worked as security at a theme park. I have found so many weapons and bottles of alcohol. People always claim they forgot they were in their bag. Who forgets a giant bottle of Chardonnay is in their bag? Zoo employee here. We received a report that someone had hopped a barrier and slapped the tiger's butt through the bars. Luckily, the tiger didn't give a dang and went back to sleep. But this was not long after the whole Harambe thing in Cincinnati, so we took it pretty seriously. Security chased him and was able to snatch a backpack off his back, but he slipped out of it and got away. When we opened the backpack there was nothing but a very large kitchen knife, a crusty t-shirt, a fake Gucci belt, 4 cell phones all with shattered screens, and about an acre of weed. I can only imagine what his day was like leading up to that moment. You encountered the party god's human avatar. Obligatory not me. My dad was a mechanic at Universal Studios in Orlando the first 5 years it was open. Some of his top stories include 3 drunken Spanish guys somehow got out of the restraints and were hood surfing the Back to the Future cars. The cars are 20 plus featuring in the air for the ride. A bunch of Japanese tourists thought earthquake was real. They jumped out of the tram, ran one direction and were almost torched by flamethrowers. So then they ran the other direction and were almost swept off the track into the machinery by the floodwater. The Jaws ride water is full of 3 to 4 inch water bugs that will bite the repair divers and draw blood. Some idiots set off a 10-foot long by 4 featuring tall pile of leftover pyrotechnics. They blew out windows in condo buildings and houses almost a mile away. My father intelligently walked away when he heard what they were about to do. They once attached an 8-foot piece of 3/4 steel pipe to a pressure hose and 3000C air tank, put a ball bearing in it and shot it through both sides of the boathouse in Jaws. Then the perimeter fence, then who knows. In the first month of King Kong the gorilla malfunctioned and swung its arm all the way inside the tram. Everyone ducked and thought it was awesome. It operated with a 1-stroke 2-ton piston. It would have crushed a human like a bug. They spent tens of thousands dollars a week on banana smell for that ride. So many employees got canned for picking up change of the ride floors. People threw it down there like a wishing well. The park actually used to donate it to charity, a few thousand a week in change. Middle Eastern tourists, very wealthy, would leave purses or camera on a bench outside the ride expecting it to be there when they got back. I used to work at a zoo which had an amphitheater. When I came in mornings after a show, my task was to scan the trails concert goers were allowed on, or could have wandered into. I was scanning for panties in the bushes, condoms, beer bottles, flasks, sex toys, weed, or really anything that would reveal the shitshow the place became during concerts. On those mornings, the things I listed were commonplace. The weirdest thing was finding a soaked furry suit and head in the woods off a trail. My friend worked at 6 Flags. He was sweeping up some trash when a raccoon wandered by, brandishing a used tampon in its teeth. I challenge you to a duel, human. Women's restrooms are always the worst. Tampons slapped on the wall. Poop, lots of poop. You find good stuff in the parking lot, though. You find good stuff in the parking lot, though. Please elaborate. It's not as exciting as some of the other ones, but when I was working at a pizza joint in an amusement park, Someone wrote a note on their tray using salad dressing that read not worth $17.95. Entirely accurate statement. I showed it to everyone I worked with, and we had a big laugh. To whoever left the note, thanks for the brief distraction. This is basically my reaction every time I go to an event where I'm pretty much a captive. Hockey games charging a slode for crappy beer. A dead, half decapitated body. Technically the park wasn't closed yet, but still. We need more info. Didn't find them. Exactly, but after the Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World closes and all the guests leave, feral cats come out and prowl around the park. We would see them occasionally, skulking around the hedges in Frontierland. Run, Mickey. They get released. WDW keeps them in cages feeding stations during park hours. Turtle that was hit by a golf cart, and once, I found a shirtless guy under the ride. It was dark and he came out of the woods while I was back there looking for dropped items. It was super creepy. People had lost weaves and grills, spelling, before, but I never found those, personally. I was holding purses wallets for my friends while they went on a ride at the fair one time, and while they were riding a fight broke out in the crowd. A weave flew through the air, landing at my feet, and I was verbally assaulted by a woman with a stroller because out of everyone in the crowd, I was apparently the one blocking her from getting her baby to safety. One time at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, I had an entire 2-liter bottle of dip spit spill on my torso while I was lifting a trash bag into the compactor behind the fest house. So I guess the strangest thing I found there was a desire for a different job. Good times. I didn't find it, but a co-worker found an employee. I don't work for the park. I'm from third-party employer. In the bathroom passed out. His face was covered in blood. We found out later that when he went to use the bathroom, a guest beat the crap out of him after he told the guest he most likely wouldn't get his money back because all the rides were shut down due to fricking lighting in the area. I worked a janitorial gig at SeaWorld for a summer '09. It wasn't after hours, but I was making my rounds through the bathrooms one day to find that someone had taken a dump in one of the sinks. It wasn't a one-pincher either, it was a full bombs away session. Forget the 20 stalls that are available in each bathroom, right? Needless to say, it was a very crappy job. Worked at Disneyland through college. Aside from the stuff that's been mentioned before, the weirdest thing I saw was some teen trying to bury drugs in a rides planter. I can only assume he had an annual pass and was leaving the drugs there for grad night, an event where high school grads party at the park all night before graduation later that week. In a distant second place, a backpack W, a poorly made false bottom filled W, about $15 in Taco Bell tacos. I guess those guys really wanted to beat the price gouging in the park. Not after the park was closed, but a few days ago the gate to a back area by a ride line was open. As I went to go close it, a couple came running out, the guy still trying to fasten his belt. Then they just got right back in line. I used to work at an amusement park on a pier about 30 feet above the ocean. During my closing routine one night, I found a live fish about the size of my hand in the middle of the walkway between some carnival style games. I was really confused at first, but then I realized a bird probably dropped it out of its mouth earlier. A little late, but I have a few. A wallet with images of weed all over it, containing a vape pen, Magnum condom, and 8th grade student id, a collar with several dog tags on it, an old, wrinkly alien prop, a loaded magazine of a compact pistol, more crushed cell phones than you can imagine. Not really an item, but a security guard was walking around in the off season and saw a little girl walking around. He walked up as she turned a corner, and she was gone. A child left behind in our souvenir store. Parents didn't want her anymore. Decided to spend the last day with her at the park and leave her there. Whoa, this is sad. I hope someone gave her a good home. I can't even begin to think of the issues this could cause later in life. Just wow. Not after hours, but during regular hours. Worked at an amusement park years ago, working a ride, and smell something terrible. The smell keeps getting worse and worse. Look over at the massive lights that points up at the roller coaster, and there is smoke coming off of them. Well, during that time of year the mayflies are crazy. They are everywhere, and they are freaking dumb. Really dumb. They were just slamming headfirst into the light and killing themselves. So many bugs were on the giant floodlights the lights started to cook the mayflies. The smell was awful. We temporarily shut down the ride to clean off the lights. For real, the smell was absolutely disgusting. Like the kind of smell you can't get out of your nose for like 3 days after and just makes you want to vomit. Must be Cedar Point. People like to spread ashes on the Haunted Mansion ride at Disneyland. We don't wait until the park closes to clean that up because they count as a biohazard. So custodians stop the ride, suck it up with a vacuum and unceremoniously throw them out. Don't scatter ashes where people have to keep spaces clean, folks. Your loved ones will just end up in the trash. My father worked at Hurricane Harbor in the middle of the winter, off-season. He was updating something in all pump houses. In the last pump house he went into, he had a grocery bag with $1,500 in all $20s. Definite drug deal money, but I don't care. He came home and gave me $300. 17-year-old me was so stoked. I haven't cleaned any parks, but let me tell you this one thing. People are freaking animals. In the local water park, I've seen people let their toddlers throw their clothes everywhere, and they don't even bother to pick them up. People are freaking animals. Somebody better warn Mickey and the gang. Phones. Dozens of phones. I never figured out why people still kept their crap in their pockets despite of all the signs and ride hosts repeating to leave it in the bins about a zillion times. It's a roller coaster that flips you upside down 6 times in 4 different ways. Surely your pocket is not the best place for valuables. I was a lift operator at a ski resort. One morning there were tire tracks in the snow going about 300 feet up the hill. Then you could see where they spun out and zigzagged back down. I later found out that it was a dude who was shut off in the bar and thought his Toyota Camry could make it to the top. I work at an indoor trampoline park and we have this massive pit of foam blocks for people to jump in. It's about 2 feet deep and about twice every year we have to take all of the blocks out, replace them, and clean the pit. Over the years myself and other co-workers have found some odd things while cleaning it out. However, the weirdest was a full bottle of that liquid smoke stuff you put on steaks and barbecue. Why someone had that on them when they jumped into a pit of foam is beyond me. Let me start by saying 2 things. I was a restroomer in the ecology depth, and 99% of the stuff I found was while the park was open. We had special days, like Gay Pride Day, where the park was rented out. We found so many cell phones left in the stalls with GIF photos still open of giant dongs and so much CM. I've found knives and guns under dumpsters just outside the gates, with metal detectors. I was sweeping with pan and broom under the Eiffel Tower and found a wad $600. My co-worker swept it into his pan and looked at me with mouth open holding back his freak out. We've found pills, weed, and booze just out in the open. And of course countless poo stories. Biggest turd I have ever seen. I grew up on a traveling carnival that goes across Canada and the US. As a kid my brother and I would ride our bikes around the lot after most people had packed up their equipment and house trailers and moved to our next exhibition. We'd find all kinds of stuff. God awful amounts of trash. Mostly, but one time we found an JanSport backpack filled to the brim with porno mags. This was pre-internet days and we were between 12 and 15 years old. That was our magnum opus of finds. Practically the holy grail for adolescent boys. Didn't last long, though. Our mom found it under my brother's bed not long after. Other than that, we would often find old, broken down bikes, CRT TVs, mini fridges, wagons, dollies, etc. People would get fired sometimes having bought all this crap and then have no way to bring it home thousands of miles by bus. The mystery of what you could find scavenging was a ton of fun as a kid. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.